Hey everyone, welcome to the Morning Grind podcast. I'm your host, Stevietpfl. It is Thursday, January 16th, 2024. We're here to talk some NFL. We got a 4-game divisional round slate. Last time we'll be live here for NFL season and joined by my good buddy Noto. Derek, what's happening, my friend?
Yeah, what's up, man? It's actually 2025, but hey,
yeah, well,
we're getting there.
It's the 2024 divisional round, though.
Okay,
Like the season.
Correct. Yeah, doing good. Last week, man, the games kind of stunk. There was only like one good game. It was a Commanders game, so hopefully we get some better football this weekend. But yeah, always one of my favorite weekends. We got the Saturday slate, Sunday slate. You can play the 4-game main slate. A lot of fun to look forward to.
Oh yeah, I mean it's like our last I feel like it's like our last weekend of like football. If you like anything that's not 2 games or single game slates. So I got a lot right and a lot wrong last week. That's for sure. So I mean I ended up with Herbert as like my quarterback, and it allowed me to get like what I wanted with McLaurin and McConkey and stuff, but Herbert kind of stunk. So yeah. What's up, chat? Hope everyone's having a great Thursday, and let's talk some football. It's a fun slate. I mean, there's 2 or 3 of these games that I feel like are going to be like banger games, and then there's the one game, the Philly game, where I have no idea what to expect in that Philly game. So we'll talk about it when we get there. We get started with Houston at Kansas City. It's a 41.5 total here. Chiefs favored by, I think it was 8.5 or 7.5 last time I looked. We'll go to the Houston side here first. What do we like for the Texans?
I keep saying it. CJ Stroud just hasn't shown much of a ceiling this season, even in a game where they, put up a bunch of points against the Chargers. Still only had 18 fantasy points. Obviously, tougher matchup on the road. Low total. I mean, they have a team total of 16.5, which is, easily the lowest on the board. So I'm probably not going to play much Stroud. Mixon only got there last week because of that long 30-yard touchdown at the very end of the game. Probably not going to be playing a lot of Mixon. But I like Nico Collins. He's just a guy that is going to get a bunch of targets. Had 28 fantasy points last week, 8 catches. I like Nico a little bit. Dalton Schultz, maybe. I think the Chiefs, if I remember correctly, they're like one of the worst against tight ends. Let me check real quick. 29th in fantasy points allowed to tight ends. So I'll play a little Nico, play a little Schultz, and that's probably it for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the 2 teams that have struggled against tight ends this year, or 2 of the teams that have struggled, are both still in the playoffs, the Eagles and the Chiefs. So, I think Schultz is a really interesting option. Played him a little bit last week. I think he was actually on my main team last week. That didn't work out very well. Nico Collins, very vintage Nico Collins last week. We saw him have a long catch. We had a touchdown, 122 yards. If we're kind of expecting Houston to be trailing in this game, like I am, I'm going to look for Nico Collins. And kind of like what we were just talking about too with Dalton Schultz. I think he's the other guy that I'm kind of looking at here for Houston. With Johnson gone, Woods questionable, dealing with a hip injury. I think we have to play a little bit of Mechie at 3,800 in a game where they're going to be trailing. So you really need him to score a touchdown. The one week that he scored a touchdown this year, he had 18 fantasy points. So you get in the end zone with him. He has a little bit of upside, and I mean they're kind of out of guys, especially if Robert Woods doesn't end up suiting up this weekend. So I think Mechie would just kind of be that guy, and I don't necessarily love this spot for Mixon, but his workload's going to be great. Even last week in a game that they kind of dominated a little bit, he had a ton of carries and ton of touches. So going to the Kansas City side, I don't know what to do. Patrick Mahomes is the cheapest I think we've ever had Patrick Mahomes, especially in the playoffs. You get playoff Mahomes here. We just saw him come off of one of his best games of the year where he threw 3 touchdowns. I think Mahomes is too cheap for playoff Mahomes. So kind of like a little bit of Patty Mahomes here. I think you can pair him up with Travis Kelce. I think you can pair him up with like Worthy, or even, potentially take some shots on Hopkins. But I think it's a Kelce Mahomes stack for me here early in the week.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Mahomes is the guy that I never played during the regular season, and then I always play him in the playoffs. He tends to run a lot more in the playoffs, and he's coming off of two big games too. He hasn't played in a few weeks, but he had 23 or 24 against the Texans, same matchup, and then put up 31 against the Steelers in his last two regular season games. So I love Mahomes, love the price point. There are a lot of good position players that I want to get up to, and spending down a quarterback certainly helps to do that. Love the Kelsey call, kind of similar to Mahomes. I don't play him a ton in the regular season and then play him a bunch in the playoffs. And if I'm picking a receiver, I think I'm going to go Xavier Worthy. We kind of saw this with Rashee Rice last year, and that he really picked it up in the second half of the season in his rookie season. And then in the playoffs, he was huge for the Chiefs. So I kind of think the same thing is going to happen with Worthy. He's had at least 19 fantasy points each of the last 3 games. They're giving him carries. He's had 25 targets or touches over the last 2 games alone. So he's a guy that I like a lot at 5,200 as well.
Just feel like the Chiefs are underpriced. I know it's the lowest total game on the slate, but I feel like the Chiefs are underpriced. You have clear options to run it back with like Nico Collins or Dalton Schultz. So kind of like the Chiefs double stack. I mean, like, think about, we just saw it in week 17 against the Steelers in a Chiefs must-win game where they would lock up number 1 seed, right? We saw the double stack get there. We saw Mahomes score 29, Worthy had 22.9, and then Travis Kelce had 22.4. You give me those numbers at their pricing, you're going to be in a good spot. So I like Kansas City double stack this weekend. I just think Kansas City is too cheap. This is the game, though. We got Washington at Detroit, 55.5 total here. Detroit, a 9.5-point favorite. Go to Washington first. I mean, the thing that I think I noticed a lot last week, and we noticed down the stretch, is Jaden Daniels is running again. We saw it at the beginning of the year that he got that injury and he kind of stopped running, but it's almost like he's run first right now. So a lot of interest in Daniels. Obviously, I think we're going right back to the well here on Terry McLaurin. He's the number 1 guy. Zacchaeus, I think, is the other wide receiver you could potentially take some shots on. Zach Ertz kind of let us down last week. Don't mind going back to him. Detroit's been kind of good against tight ends all year, so it worries me. I think they're number 1 against tight ends and allowed the fewest fantasy points per game to tight ends this year, but they've allowed the second most, I think, fantasy points to wide receivers. So I think Scary Terry is in for another big week this weekend.
Yeah, I was going to say, Detroit's kind of a funny matchup. Usually when a team's really bad against the pass, you typically get a lot of fantasy production for both receivers and tight ends, but that's not the case with the Lions. They give up a lot to wide receivers, and they're really tough on tight ends. So love the McLaurin call. I mean, we've been on him all season. He's had at least 20 fantasy points in 5 of his last 7 games now. It's a good matchup. Don't mind looking to Zacchaeus. Don't mind looking to De'Ami Brown. Ended up getting 5 targets and a touchdown last week. And Jaden Daniels is probably my favorite quarterback play on the slate. I mean, I know there's a lot of good options, but you mentioned the rushing. 13 rushing attempts last week. Week 17, he had 16 rushing attempts in the game that mattered. You can kind of throw out the Dallas game in week 18 there. So, yeah, I like the Daniels double stacks quite a bit. We're just single stack with McLaurin. Probably won't be looking to these running backs, but if I was going to choose one, I think I would prefer Eckler over Brian Robinson. Do you have a take there?
I agree. Eckler, I mean, Washington's going to be trailing in this game. Yeah. And if they're not, I mean, I don't think Robinson's still going to get there. So I think Eckler has the opportunity to get 5 to 10 targets out of the backfield, where I feel like we saw Robinson get 5 targets last week, but I mean, I think that was his highest target total all year. So I think Eckler is going to be the guy that's in there when they're trailing.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't have much to add. I like the Brown call. At least 4 targets in 5 straight games to kind of finish out the season here. Crowder's still banged up, so I think Brown or Zacchaeus as like your double stack with Daniels. I think that has maybe a little bit more upside than Ertz. So Detroit, I mean, what not to like about Detroit? David Montgomery going to be back. I still think Gibbs is going to see. I think it's going to be more of a 70-30 than a 50-50 type of role this weekend. I don't think that we're going to see David Montgomery fully 100% play this week. I know they said that he practiced and his knee's feeling better and everything, but that injury is not an injury you come back from as fast as he is. So I think we still see Gibbs at least 65, but I think it's going to be closer to 70% this weekend. So like Gibbs, I like the price on David Montgomery, especially like when you're trying to hunt touchdowns. But it's St. Brown, it's Williams, it's Laporta, it's everybody. I mean, Detroit, their offense is just so good. And I mean, who do you not play? You know, that's kind of the question you have to ask yourself.
Yeah, team total of 32 in the playoffs is pretty wild. Typically, we see defenses step it up in the playoffs, but we're gonna expect a bunch of points for Detroit. Like your call on Gibbs, just because, I don't think they're gonna rush David Montgomery back into a full-time role. They've got their eyes on the Super Bowl. They're gonna need him the rest of the way. So I do think Gibbs is gonna see 65 to 70% of the touches in the backfield. My favorite running back play on the slate for sure. Look at his last 4 games. I mean, 49, 29, 28 fantasy points. The touches have been through the roof. Obviously, this game means everything to Detroit. So I think Gibbs is going to get a ton of work. And if you do think Washington can put up a fight here, I mean, Goff in close games has had a ceiling. He's at a low floor just because they don't need him in a lot of these games. But the Goff single or double stacks and kind of fading Gibbs or playing with Gibbs is kind of a unique way to attack the lines.
I think it also depends a lot on just the weather on Sunday for the Buffalo game. I mean, I was reading Kevin Ross' weather report earlier, and he was talking about freezing cold in the teens, plus a lot of wind, plus potentially some snow. So, like, as the weekend kind of progresses, I mean, it's Thursday, noon, 1 o'clock. Watch the weather for the Buffalo game, because I mean, listen, we all like Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen is definitely the highest quarterback ceiling play of the year on any given slate, especially in a game where it's probably going to be close. But if the weather is going to be really crappy in Buffalo, I mean, you could potentially Saturday night pivot to one of these guys. So watching the weather, I think, is another thing that you got to keep an eye on when you're thinking of this game, because I think Josh Allen's going to definitely have some ownership, as he should. All right, we got Rams and Eagles up next, 44.5 total in this game. Philadelphia, a 6.5 point favorite. What are your thoughts here on the Rams?
I kind of like the Rams to pull off the upset here. I don't know, Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford in the playoffs just give me some good vibes. But from a fantasy perspective, it's really hard to pick on this Eagles defense. They've been so good, especially in the second half of the season. Obviously, Puka Nacua is going to be the wide receiver 1. Cooper Kupp can get there, but, man, he's been really bad. He's been held under 5 fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 games. That's like Jordan Whittington level of production for Cooper Kupp. So kind of surprising there. I like Karen Williams. He's probably my only target that I would look to here, just because we know he's going to play almost every down. Blake Corum is on IR, so we don't have to worry about the backup. Ronnie Rivers probably not going to see more than a couple of snaps. So I like Karen Williams. And then Higbee was just a huge target in the first half of last week's game. Maybe he's the wideout number 2 for Stafford now.
Yeah, do we think like Cooper Kupp's hurt? Like, because it wasn't even the fact that he only had 1 target. Like, he was only on the field, I think, like 28 to 30 snaps, like somewhere in there. Yeah, so I was pulling it up. 29 of 53 offensive snaps last week for Cooper Kupp. So
how many did Higbee play? Because he was like 20% before playoffs.
Yeah, so I mean, I worry about Cooper Kupp right now. We all know that Puka Nacua, like, he's the guy. Like, he's the guy that Stafford's going to target a ton, especially in a close game. We're watching Higbee with the chest injury. I think he'll play. I think he'll be good to go. And, I mean, we just can't keep, like, overlooking Williams' production and how much he's on the field and how much he touches the ball. But Eagles' defense is really good. But like you said, Sean McVay is just he's just a different coach, man. He's that guy. So McVay is a guy that we're going to talk about for years and years and years. He knows how to run an offensive system, and I think that they'll beat the Eagles somewhere. It's just kind of trying to figure out who it's going to be. I mean, so I wouldn't even necessarily sleep on Cooper Kupp in large field tournaments this weekend just because he hasn't done anything recently. It wouldn't shock me if we see Cooper Kupp have a game where he gets 12 targets if they're double teaming Nacua or something. So But I like the Higbee call. I think he's the guy that I'm going to be playing the most outside of Puka Nacua.
Yeah, weren't the Rams like 1-4 to start the season?
I think it was something crazy, yeah.
So they've been like one of the best teams in the NFL since week 5, and nobody seems to give them any credit. It's pretty impressive.
I will say, I felt bad for Sam Darnold last week. The Rams defense destroyed that guy.
That offensive line had no chance, which is weird because they've been pretty good all year.
I know they were dealing with a couple injuries, but it didn't matter. So
yeah, once they got down and abandoned the run, it was bad.
Don't sleep on the Rams defense either. Is kind of what I was getting at. I think the Rams could beat Philadelphia in this game, as much as I hate to say that, but I think the Rams have a legit chance of the upset here. For, like you said, I mean, for the second straight week, and I thought Minnesota was going to beat the Rams by a bunch last week, so they surprised me. What do we like here for the Eagles side?
Man, my biggest mistake last week was just loading up on Saquon Barkley. I mean, he ended up having over 100 yards, but he didn't score the touchdown. Wasn't too involved in the passing game, and he was so expensive that he just didn't pay off his price point. But decent matchup here. The Rams have been mediocre against the run. If you assume that the Eagles are going to be winning, then I don't mind going back to Saquon, but the pricing isn't exactly great at 8,200. It's a slate where we want to pay up for a lot of these guys. I don't know what to do with the receivers. I mean, I can always get talked into AJ Brown or Devontae, but they have such low floors. Like last week, they both had less than 10 fantasy points. On a per dollar basis, I might just play Dallas Goedert. The Rams, one of the worst teams in the NFL at defending tight ends. Goedert was pretty involved last week, ended up scoring a touchdown. So I kind of like Goedert just on a per dollar basis here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate that. Like I said, the targets are there for Goedert. At least five targets in 4 of the last 5 games for Goedert. So, we talked a little bit about this situation down the stretch of the season. AJ Brown, the big game is there. Like, it's possibly there, but you need a competitive game. I think, like, if you think the Rams are going to be, if you're with me and Noto and you think the Rams have a legit chance to win this game, you have to play AJ Brown. You have to play Saquon this week. Those are the types of games that we see big numbers here. Saquon could have had 8 to 12 more fantasy points if he didn't go down last week in the end of that game. So he would have had another 40 or 50 yard touchdown, and it would have been way different fantasy wise for Saquon had he not gone down. So the ability for Saquon to break a big run and make a big play, and the ability for AJ Brown to score touchdowns is just too good not to like these guys. Where would you rank Hurts compared to Daniels, Allen, Mahomes kind of guys this weekend?
So I didn't end up watching the Eagles game last week. How much was he running the ball a lot?
I think he only ran the ball 5 or 6 times.
I'm just worried about the concussion heading into the game and him running the ball, especially with the tush push. My big brain take was that they were just going to give the ball to Saquon at the 1. So I didn't end up seeing much of that game. But I'm probably going to – 6.8 is a really good price point, but I think I have him below Daniels, probably below Mahomes. And then, both the guys in the next game have 30-plus fantasy point upside. So, he'd probably be 4th or 5th on my list.
Yeah. He's just – I don't know, how much Hurts I'm going to get to this weekend. Even in a 20-inch max build, he might be one of the quarterbacks I cut. I try to play 2 or 3 quarterbacks, and he might be one of the guys I cut. I think a lot of it also has to do with this next game and the weather in this game. So let's kind of talk about that one real quick. We got Baltimore at Buffalo, 51.5 total. Baltimore a 1.5 point favorite, which I thought was super interesting. That Buffalo is a home dog. Well, I don't know what these books are doing. I have a take about that in a few minutes. We'll go to the Baltimore side here first. Obviously, like I said, Kevin Roth, he said really cold in the teens. It's going to have some wind, which is not great. And he did say that there is some slight correlation between high winds and low temperatures for low-scoring games. And there's some potential snow. And he said that, we'll have to check that later in the week. But that's scary to me. Cold, windy, snowy. It just doesn't seem like anything besides maybe Derrick Henry or Lamar Jackson make a lot of sense here. Maybe some Mark Andrews, but I think it's Lamar and it's Derrick Henry for me. I mean, when you think about a windy, cold, snowy game, like running the football.
I was going to say there's a negative correlation between wind, snow, and points scored per game, and there's a positive correlation between if you get wind, snow, and Derrick Henry. I mean, these are the games where he just crushes, and you get him in the playoffs. I mean, look at his game log the last few weeks when the Ravens have had to win. He's just gone nuts. I think he's had at least 28 fantasy points in 3 straight games. I like Saquon, but I am definitely prioritizing Henry over him. If I can only spend up on one running back spot, I think it's going to be Henry. And, I mean, I'll always find with Lamar. Do we know Zay Flowers going to be out again? Do we know?
I think he's trending in the right direction, but did not practice Wednesday. So, I mean, everything I've read is he's trending in the right direction, but still not practicing. So I don't know how he's trending in the right direction if he hasn't returned to the practice field.
Okay. Do you have the snap counts in front of you from last game?
Just X'd out of it. I'll look it up real quick.
I wanted to see how often Likely was on the field because it seemed like he only had 4 targets, but it seemed like he was pretty involved. And, with Flowers out, I expected him to run a lot of 2 tight end sets.
Yeah, let's see. Snap counts. We could do this on the go.
Yeah.
All right, so they had 74 offensive snaps, and Likely was on the field for 59 of them.
Love that. So Flowers
he was the highest of everybody.
Oh, love that. So yeah, Flowers out again. Give me all the Likely here. I mean, Andrews is fine too. Bateman's fine too. But the problem is we're probably not going to know like his status, and this is the very last game. So that'll kind of create some interesting late swap choices if you want to leave some flexibility open.
So I'll say this, right? He ran a route on 20% or 20 of his pass plays. So 20 snaps, he ran a route, and you said he had 5 targets?
Yeah.
So, I mean, he got targeted, 25% of the time he ran a route last weekend. So that's great. I will say he blocked a lot more than Andrews, and Andrews ran more routes when he was on the field than Likely. So I still think like Andrews is the guy that's going to get, but I mean, when you're looking at this rest of this Wallace and Bateman and stuff, I think you're excited about taking some shots on Likely.
Yeah. And that's more if Flowers is out, but hopefully we get his news like at least before the first Sunday game.
Yeah. I mean, we might not. So
yeah.
Might be a game time decision, and we might not get that news. So see how it kind of plays out. Go to the Buffalo side here. What do we like here for Buffalo?
Yeah, another one of my mistakes last week was prioritizing Josh Allen. He ended up having 25, but I mean, at his price point, we need a little bit more since a lot of the other quarterbacks ended up having big weeks. But I'm fine playing Allen each and every week. I don't think you have to pair him up with anybody. Given his rushing upside, he tends to run so much in the playoffs, especially in these big games against good teams. So give me all the Allen. James Cook got there last week and ended up with 23 touches. I just don't think we can count on that every week. Prior to that, he had 10, 15, 11, 14, 6, and 14 touches. So it's not like he's a guy that's getting 20 touches a game. He needs to break those big plays to pay off that price point. I would just rather have Henry, Saquon, Gibbs all over James Cook. Then I'll probably play a little Kincaid. I do think I'm going to have a lot of 2 tight end builds this week because we need value, and that's kind of the one position where there's a lot of cheap guys.
Yeah, I think if I'm going to pair Allen with anybody, it's probably Shakir. They just didn't need to keep the gas down last week. They just kind of dominated Denver. So I think you and I were kind of hoping for a closer game, and we just got got a lot of lopsided games last weekend. So, like you said at the top of the show, we're hoping that just get better games. And the fact that Allen's an underdog at home, I mean, even with the weather kind of being bad, it just offers more upside for his rushing ability. So, I mean, we could see him rush 60, 70, 80 yards in this game and rush for 2 touchdowns. So, I think his ceiling is massive. He's my favorite quarterback play on the week, depending on the weather. It's him, Daniels, and Mahomes would be the 3 guys that I'm going to play a lot of this weekend. Lamar's right on that fringy for me. He's probably my 4th favorite, so I like it. I do. And like you said, I don't think you have to pair Allen with anybody. But if you are, I think it's Shakir or Kincaid. So I agree with you on that. And I think that's it. I don't think we have anything else from this game, right?
I think that's it.
All right, one last time for this year's NFL season. Let's play the morning grind game, and then we'll get out of here. Quarterback for 300 plus passing yards. Who do you got?
I'm going to go Jaden Daniels. I think they're going to be trailing a lot. I also think he can get you 50 plus on the ground. So love him in all formats and like him to throw for over 300.
Yeah, I'm going to go in that same game and say Jared Goff throws for 300 plus. It is Thursday. Low on running back for a touchdown, and low on this time of the year is like less than like 25%.
Okay, I'll go a little off the board. I'll go Austin Eckler. I think he catches a touchdown this week.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I think David Montgomery finds the end zone, so I'll go David Montgomery. Quarterback, wide receiver, stack for a touchdown.
Am I allowed to say Jaden Daniels twice?
Yeah.
All right, I'll go Jaden Daniels to Terry McLaurin. Works every week. Why do anything else?
Yeah, I'm going to go CJ Stroud to Nico Collins. It's more of a Nico Collins play than it is a CJ Stroud play. Wide receiver for 8 plus targets.
Nico Collins got to get there.
Yeah, there's two guys that I think is just going to get peppered with targets this week in games where they're probably trailing, and it's him and it's Puka Nacua. So I think those are the guys you're hoping for big targets from, big game target wise. Give me a tight end that's going to score a touchdown.
I think this is the tight end week. I think we're going to see a lot of tight end touchdowns. So I like Kincaid, I like Goddard. I'm going to go Isaiah Likely.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's off the board too. I'm going to go Dalton Schultz. The more we talked about it, the more I think that like that's a really strong possibility. And I think I'm going to double stack Kansas City a lot this week. So with their prices the way they are, and double stack Kansas City and then like game stack that Detroit game because I have so much salary left. So something I probably end up doing a bunch this week. Defense for 10 plus points.
I don't know. I don't think any defense is going to play particularly well. So for DFS, I'm just going to go the cheapest that I can. But with that said, I'll go with the Chiefs.
I'm going to go Rams. I think the Rams defense showed us a lot last week at getting after the quarterback. If we're worried like Jalen Hurts is not fully 100% yet, like I think the Rams defense showed us enough last week where they're at 2.7K. There were some flyers this week. Let's go to the betting portion of the show. Any against the spread or money line bets you like?
I got to go with Josh Allen at home. Give me the money line. I think this is their year. I'm hoping. Give me the Bills.
I'm with you. I didn't even take the 1.5. I had straight up bet Baltimore or Buffalo to win the game. So I'm right there with you. That's mine as well. Any over-unders you like?
You know what would be the most Buffalo thing ever? They're up 7 with like 2 minutes to go. The Ravens go down, score a touchdown, and then go for 2, win by 1.
Yeah, well, if that happens, it happens, man. I mean, I think it's crazy that Baltimore is not favored in this game, or Buffalo is not favored in this game.
Yeah, because it's just like they had the game in hand and then didn't even have a chance to, come back like they did against the Chiefs when the Chiefs just went down and scored the very first play in overtime. Okay, what's this one? The over-under?
Yeah, any over-unders you like?
I mean, this total is so high, but I think it's going to be a shootout. Give me Washington and Detroit over.
Yeah, I didn't bet any over-unders, but the more I think about it, the more I might bet the over-under or the over in the Kansas City game. Just looking at that game, I think it's really, really interesting from that aspect. So any player props or pick 'em plays you like this week?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Derrick Henry over 95.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, I'm looking to see if this is still available. Earlier this week, I bet Travis Kelce over 49.5 receiving yards, but I don't know if it's still 49.5. It's 51.5 on FanDuel. I'll still take the over on that. So over 51.5 receiving yards for Travis Kelce. I like getting it at 49.5, but I think the 51.5 is still a fair number.
Yeah. I like it. Dude, Saquon's 111.5 rushing yards. That's pretty wild.
But how do you argue it though, right?
I don't
Like
know.
he's having such an incredible season. Like how do you argue it? So the other I don't mind the Josh Allen touchdown bet this week either. I think that there's a probability, like a high probability of him getting a rushing touchdown this week. So I don't hate the Josh Allen rushing or the touchdown. I think it's like plus 110. So if you could still get that plus money, I don't hate it either. All right, NFL season for us, for you and I, done here on the morning grind. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Yeah, we didn't talk about FanDuel much, but Ken Simmons in the chat says Montgomery's 4K on FanDuel.
Nice.
Very playable. So if you're playing on FanDuel, I like that. But yeah, I mean, thanks for having me on the show this season. Always been fun working with you. Excited to see what the morning grind does moving forward. But yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man. I keep being a birdie in Dan's ear about you and I working together on something for football next season on RotoGrinders. So I'm hoping that comes to life. And we have David Montgomery on because FanDuel did split slates, and the Saturday slate, he's one of the highest projected owned running backs. It makes so much sense. I can't believe he's 4K over there. That's crazy. So fun season, man. Always a blast. And yeah, I'm excited for the future of the morning grind. This will be the last time that it's on RotoGrinders. So for now, maybe they bring it back, but right now, this is the last time. So appreciate everyone over the years. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope everyone has a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you again soon.